Tonight we wander old roads where lantern light trembles on wet stone, and the cedar woods remember every footstep. These are Japan's classic folk tales. Stories traded by hearth fire and moonlight, where fishermen meet sea kings, foxes borrow human faces, and a single blossom can change a life. Listen for the hush between raindrops. In that quiet, heroes are humble, tricksters are clever, and kindness is the oldest magic. Settle in. Let the river carry you, let the bamboo sway above you, and let these tales guide you home. Before we begin, if you truly enjoy these stories, hitting like or subscribe helps me keep making them, and hopefully helps you keep drifting off. Let me know where you're listening from tonight. I'm always amazed by the places people tune in. Now, get comfortable, take a slow breath in, and let it out. Because once this story begins, chances are you'll be asleep before it ends. The Tongue-Cut Sparrow. Long, long ago in Japan there lived an old man and his wife. The old man was a good, kind-hearted, hard-working old fellow, but his wife was a regular crosspatch who spoiled the happiness of her home by her scolding tongue. She was always grumbling about something from morning to night. The old man had for a long time ceased to take any notice of her crossness. He was out most of the day at work in the fields, and as he had no child, for his amusement when he came home, he kept a tame sparrow. He loved the little bird just as much as if she had been his child. When he came back at night after his hard day's work in the open air, it was his only pleasure to pet the sparrow, to talk to her and to teach her little tricks, which she learned very quickly. The old man would open her cage and let her fly about the room, and they would play together. Then, when supper time came, he always saved some tidbits from his meal with which to feed his little bird. Now one day, the old man went out to chop wood in the forest, and the old woman stopped at home to wash clothes. The day before, she had made some starch, and now, when she came to look for it, it was all gone. The bowl, which she had filled full yesterday, was quite empty. While she was wondering who could have used or stolen the starch, down flew the pet sparrow, and bowing her little feathered head, a trick which she had been taught by her master, the pretty bird chirped and said, "It is I who have taken the starch. I thought it was some food put out for me in that basin, and I ate it all. If I have made a mistake, I beg you to forgive me. Tweet, tweet, tweet." You see from this that the sparrow was a truthful bird, and the old woman ought to have been willing to forgive her at once when she asked her pardon so nicely. But not so. The old woman had never loved the sparrow and had often quarreled with her husband for keeping what she called a dirty bird about the house, saying that it only made extra work for her. Now she was only too delighted to have some cause of complaint against the pet. She scolded and even cursed the poor little bird for her bad behavior, and not content with using these harsh, unfeeling words, in a fit of rage she seized the sparrow, who all this time had spread out her wings and bowed her head before the old woman to show how sorry she was, and fetched the scissors and cut off the poor little bird's tongue. I suppose you took my starch with that tongue. Now, you may see what it is like to go without it." And with these dreadful words, she drove the bird away, not caring in the least what might happen to it, and without the smallest pity for its suffering. So unkind was she. The old woman, after she had driven the sparrow away, made some more rice paste, grumbling all the time at the trouble, and after starching all her clothes, spread the things on boards to dry in the sun, instead of ironing them as they do in England. In the evening, the old man came home. As usual, on the way back, he looked forward to the time when he should reach his gate and see his pet come flying and chirping to meet him, ruffling out her feathers to show her joy, and at last coming to rest on his shoulder. But tonight the old man was very disappointed, for not even the shadow of his dear sparrow was to be seen. He quickened his steps, hastily drew off his straw sandals, and stepped onto the veranda. Still no sparrow was to be seen. He now felt sure that his wife, in one of her cross tempers, had shut the sparrow up in its cage. So he called her and said anxiously, "Where is Suzume-san, Miss Sparrow, today?" The old woman pretended not to know at first and answered, "Your sparrow? I am sure I don't know. Now I come to think of it, I haven't seen her all the afternoon. I shouldn't wonder if the ungrateful bird had flown away and left you after all your petting." But at last, when the old man gave her no peace, but asked her again and again, insisting that she must know what had happened to his pet, she confessed all. She told him crossly how the sparrow had eaten the rice paste she had specially made for starching her clothes, and how when the sparrow had confessed to what she had done, in great anger she had taken her scissors and cut out her tongue, and how finally she had driven the bird away and forbidden her to return to the house again. Then the old woman showed her husband the sparrow's tongue, saying, "Here is the tongue I cut off. Horrid little bird, why did it eat all my starch? How could you be so cruel? Oh, how could you so cruel?" was all that the old man could answer. He was too kind-hearted to punish his beshrew of a wife, but he was terribly distressed at what had happened to his poor little sparrow. "What a dreadful misfortune for my poor Suzumi-san to lose her tongue," he said to himself. "She won't be able to chirp any more, and surely the pain of the cutting of it out in that rough way must have made her ill. Is there nothing to be done?" The old man shed many tears after his cross wife had gone to sleep. While he wiped away the tears with the sleeve of his cotton robe, a bright thought comforted him. He would go and look for the sparrow on the morrow. Having decided this, he was able to go to sleep at last. The next morning, he rose early, as soon as ever the day broke, and snatching a hasty breakfast, started out over the hills and through the woods, stopping at every clump of bamboos to cry, "Where, oh where does my tongue-cut sparrow stay? Where, oh where does my tongue-cut sparrow stay?" He never stopped to rest for his noonday meal, and it was far on in the afternoon when he found himself near a large bamboo wood. Bamboo groves are the favorite haunts of sparrows, and there sure enough at the edge of the wood he saw his own dear sparrow waiting to welcome him. He could hardly believe his eyes for joy and ran forward quickly to greet her. She bowed her little head and went through a number of the tricks her master had taught her to show her pleasure at seeing her old friend again, and, wonderful to relate, she could talk as of old. The old man told her how sorry he was for all that had happened and inquired after her tongue, wondering how she could speak so well without it. Then the sparrow opened her beak and showed him that a new tongue had grown in place of the old one, and begged him not to think any more about the past, for she was quite well now. Then the old man knew that his sparrow was a fairy and no common bird. It would be difficult to exaggerate the old man's rejoicing now. He forgot all his troubles. He forgot even how tired he was, for he had found his lost sparrow, and instead of being ill and without a tongue, as he had feared and expected to find her, she was well and happy, and with a new tongue, and without a sign of the ill treatment she had received from his wife. And above all, she was a fairy. The sparrow asked him to follow her, and flying before him, she led him to a beautiful house in the heart of the bamboo grove. The old man was utterly astonished when he entered the house to find what a beautiful place it was. It was built of the whitest wood. The soft, cream-colored mats which took the place of carpets were the finest he had ever seen, and the cushions that the sparrow brought out for him to sit on were made of the finest silk and crepe. Beautiful vases and lacquer boxes adorned the tokonoma of every room. One, an alcove where precious objects are displayed. The sparrow led the old man to the place of honor, and then, taking her place at a humble distance, she thanked him with many polite bows for all the kindness he had shown her for many long years. Then the Lady Sparrow, as we will now call her, introduced all her family to the old man. This done, her daughters, robed in dainty crepe gowns, brought in on beautiful old-fashioned trays a feast of all kinds of delicious foods, till the old man began to think he must be dreaming. In the middle of the dinner, some of the sparrow's daughters performed a wonderful dance called the Suzume Odori, or the Sparrow's Dance, to amuse the guest. Never had the old man enjoyed himself so much. The hours flew by too quickly in this lovely spot, with all these fairy sparrows to wait upon him, and to feast him, and to dance before him. But the night came on, and the darkness reminded him that he had a long way to go, and must think about taking his leave and return home. He thanked his kind hostess for her splendid entertainment, and begged her for his sake to forget all she had suffered at the hands of his cross old wife. He told the Lady Sparrow that it was a great comfort and happiness to him to find her in such a beautiful home, and to know that she wanted for nothing. It was his anxiety to know how she fared and what had really happened to her that had led him to seek her. Now he knew that all was well. He could return home with a light heart. If ever she wanted him for anything, she had only to send for him, and he would come at once. The Lady Sparrow begged him to stay and rest several days and enjoy the change, but the old man said he must return to his old wife, who would probably be cross at his not coming home at the usual time, and to his work, and therefore, much as he wished to do so, he could not accept her kind invitation. But now that he knew where the Lady Sparrow lived, he would come to see her whenever he had the time. When the Lady Sparrow saw that she could not persuade the old man to stay longer, she gave an order to some of her servants, and they at once brought in 2 boxes, one large and the other small. These were placed before the old man, and the Lady Sparrow asked him to choose whichever he liked for a present, which she wished to give him. The old man could not refuse this kind proposal, and he chose the smaller box, saying, "I am now too old and feeble to carry the big and heavy box. As you are so kind as to say that I may take whichever I like, I will choose the small one, which will be easier for me to carry." Then the sparrows all helped him put it on his back, and went to the gate to see him off, bidding him goodbye with many bows, and entreating him to come again whenever he had the time. Thus, the old man and his pet sparrow separated quite happily, the sparrow showing not the least ill will for all the unkindness she had suffered at the hands of the old wife. Indeed, she only felt sorrow for the old man who had to put up with it all his life. When the old man reached home, he found his wife even crosser than usual, for it was late on in the night, and she had been waiting up for him for a long time. "Where have you been all this time?" she asked in a big voice. "Why do you come back so late?" The old man tried to pacify her by showing her the box of presents he had brought back with him, and then he told her of all that had happened to him and how wonderfully he had been entertained at the sparrow's house. "Now let us see what is in the box," said the old man, not giving her time to grumble again. "You must help me open it." And they both sat down before the box and opened it. To their utter astonishment, they found the box filled to the brim with gold and silver coins and many other precious things. The mats of their little cottage fairly glittered as they took out the things one by one and put them down and handled them over and over again. The old man was overjoyed at the sight of the riches that were now his. Beyond his brightest expectations was the sparrow's gift, which would enable him to give up work and live in ease and comfort the rest of his days. He said, "Thanks to my good little sparrow. Thanks to my good little sparrow," many times. But the old woman, after the first moments of surprise and satisfaction at the sight of the gold and silver were over, could not suppress the greed of her wicked nature. She now began to reproach the old man for not having brought home the big box of presents, for in the innocence of his heart, he had told her how he had refused the large box of presents which the sparrows had offered him, preferring the smaller one because it was light and easy to carry home. "You silly old man," said she, "why did you not bring the large box? Just think what we have lost. We might have had twice as much silver and gold as this. You are certainly an old fool," she screamed, and then went to bed as angry as she could be. The old man now wished that he had said nothing about the big box, but it was too late. The greedy old woman, not contented with the good luck which had so unexpectedly befallen them, and which she so little deserved, made up her mind, if possible, to get more. Early the next morning, she got up and made the old man describe the way to the sparrow's house. When he saw what was in her mind, he tried to keep her from going, but it was useless. She would not listen to one word he said. It is strange that the old woman did not feel ashamed of going to see the sparrow after the cruel way she had treated her in cutting off her tongue in a fit of rage. But her greed to get the big box made her forget everything else. It did not even enter her thoughts that the sparrows might be angry with her, as indeed they were, and might punish her for what she had done. Ever since the lady sparrow had returned home in the sad plight in which they had first found her, weeping and bleeding from the mouth, her whole family and relations had done little else but speak of the cruelty of the old woman. How could she, they asked each other, inflict such a heavy punishment for such a trifling offense as that of eating some rice paste by mistake? They all loved the old man, who was so kind and good and patient under all his troubles, but the old woman they hated, and they determined, if ever they had the chance, to punish her as she deserved. They had not long to wait. After walking for some hours, the old woman had at last found the bamboo grove, which she had made her husband carefully describe, and now she stood before it, crying out, "Where is the tongue-cut sparrow's house? Where is the tongue-cut sparrow's house?" At last she saw the eaves of the house peeping out from amongst the bamboo foliage. She hastened to the door and knocked loudly. When the servants told the lady sparrow that her old mistress was at the door asking to see her, she was somewhat surprised at the unexpected visit after all that had taken place, and she wondered not a little at the boldness of the old woman in venturing to come to the house. The lady sparrow, however, was a polite bird, and so she went out to greet the old woman, remembering that she had once been her mistress. The old woman intended, however, to waste no time in words. She went right to the point without the least shame, and said, "You need not trouble to entertain me as you did my old man. I have come myself to get the box which he so stupidly left behind. I shall soon take my leave if you will give me the big box. That is all I want." The lady sparrow at once consented and told her servants to bring out the big box. The old woman eagerly seized it and hoisted it on her back, and without even stopping to thank the lady sparrow, began to hurry homewards. The box was so heavy that she could not walk fast, much less run, as she would have liked to do, so anxious was she to get home and see what was inside the box, but she had often to sit down and rest herself by the way. While she was staggering along under the heavy load, her desire to open the box became too great to be resisted. She could wait no longer, for she supposed this big box to be full of gold and silver and precious jewels like the small one her husband had received. At last, this greedy and selfish old woman put down the box by the wayside and opened it carefully, expecting to gloat her eyes on a mine of wealth. What she saw, however, so terrified her that she nearly lost her senses. As soon as she lifted the lid, a number of horrible and frightful-looking demons bounced out of the box and surrounded her as if they intended to kill her. Not even in nightmares had she ever seen such horrible creatures as her much-coveted box contained. A demon with one huge eye right in the middle of its forehead, came and glared at her. Monsters with gaping mouths looked as if they would devour her. A huge snake coiled and hissed about her, and a big frog hopped and croaked towards her. The old woman had never been so frightened in her life, and ran from the spot as fast as her quaking legs would carry her, glad to escape alive. When she reached home, she fell to the floor and told her husband with tears all that had happened to her, and how she had been nearly killed by the demons in the box. Then she began to blame the sparrow, but the old man stopped her at once, saying, "Don't blame the sparrow. It is your wickedness which has at last met with its reward. I only hope this may be a lesson to you in the future." The old woman said nothing more, and from that day she repented of her cross, unkind ways, and by degrees became a good old woman, so that her husband hardly knew her to be the same person, and they spent their last days together happily, free from want or care, spending carefully the treasure the old man had received from his pet, the tongue-cut sparrow. The farmer and the badger. Long, long ago, there lived an old farmer and his wife who had made their home in the mountains, far from any town. Their only neighbor was a bad and malicious badger. This badger used to come out every night and run across to the farmer's field and spoil the vegetables and the rice, which the farmer spent his time in carefully cultivating. The badger at last grew so ruthless in his mischievous work and did so much harm everywhere on the farm that the good-natured farmer could not stand it any longer and determined to put a stop to it. So he lay in wait day after day and night after night with a big club, hoping to catch the badger, but all in vain. Then he laid traps for the wicked animal. The farmer's trouble and patience was rewarded, for one fine day on going his rounds, he found the badger caught in a hole he had dug for that purpose. The farmer was delighted at having caught his enemy and carried him home securely bound with a rope. When he reached the house, the farmer said to his wife, "I have at last caught the bad badger. You must keep an eye on him while I am out at work and not let him escape, because I want to make him into soup tonight." Saying this, he hung the badger up to the rafters of his storehouse and went out to his work in the fields. The badger was in great distress, for he did not at all like the idea of being made into soup that night, and he thought and thought for a long time, trying to hit upon some plan by which he might escape. It was hard to think clearly in his uncomfortable position, for he had been hung upside down. Very near him, at the entrance to the storehouse, looking out towards the green fields and the trees and the pleasant sunshine, stood the farmer's old wife, pounding barley. She looked tired and old. Her face was seamed with many wrinkles and was as brown as leather, and every now and then she stopped to wipe the perspiration which rolled down her face. "Dear lady," said the wily badger, "you must be very weary doing such heavy work in your old age. Won't you let me do that for you? My arms are very strong, and I could relieve you for a little while." "Thank you for your kindness," said the old woman, "but I cannot let you do this work for me, because I must not untie you, for you might escape if I did, and my husband would be very angry if he came home." and found you gone. Now, the badger is one of the most cunning of animals, and he said again in a very sad, gentle voice, "You are very unkind. You might untie me, for I promise not to try to escape. If you are afraid of your husband, I will let you bind me again before his return, when I have finished pounding the barley. I am so tired and sore, tied up like this. If you would only let me down for a few minutes, I would indeed be thankful." The old woman had a good and simple nature, and could not think badly of anyone. Much less did she think that the badger was only deceiving her in order to get away. She felt sorry too for the animal as she turned to look at him. He looked in such a sad plight, hanging downwards from the ceiling by his legs, which were all tied together so tightly that the rope and the knots were cutting into the skin. So in the kindness of her heart, and believing the creature's promise that he would not run away, she untied the cord and let him down. The old woman then gave him the wooden pestle and told him to do the work for a short time while she rested. He took the pestle, but instead of doing the work as he was told, the badger at once sprang upon the old woman and knocked her down with the heavy piece of wood. He then killed her and cut her up and made soup of her and waited for the return of the old farmer. The old man worked hard in his fields all day, and as he worked he thought with pleasure that no more now would his labor be spoiled by the destructive badger. Towards sunset he left his work and turned to go home. He was very tired, but the thought of the nice supper of hot badger soup awaiting his return cheered him. The thought that the badger might get free and take revenge on the poor old woman never once came into his mind. The badger meanwhile assumed the old woman's form, and as soon as he saw the old farmer approaching, came out to greet him on the veranda of the little house, saying, "So, you have come back at last. I have made the badger soup and have been waiting for you for a long time." The old farmer quickly took off his straw sandals and sat down before his tiny dinner tray. The innocent man never even dreamed that it was not his wife but the badger who was waiting upon him, and asked at once for the soup. Then the badger suddenly transformed himself back to his natural form and cried out, "You wife-eating old man, look out for the bones in the kitchen." Laughing loudly and derisively, he escaped out of the house and ran away to his den in the hills. The old man was left behind alone. He could hardly believe what he had seen and heard. Then, when he understood the whole truth, he was so scared and horrified that he fainted right away. After a while he came round and burst into tears. He cried loudly and bitterly. He rocked himself to and fro in his hopeless grief. It seemed too terrible to be real that his faithful old wife had been killed and cooked by the badger while he was working quietly in the fields, knowing nothing of what was going on at home, and congratulating himself on having once for all got rid of the wicked animal who had so often spoiled his fields. And oh, the horrible thought, he had very nearly drunk the soup which the creature had made of his poor old woman. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear," he wailed aloud. Now, not far away, there lived in the same mountain a kind, good-natured old rabbit. He heard the old man crying and sobbing, and at once set out to see what was the matter, and if there was anything he could do to help his neighbor. The old man told him all that had happened. When the rabbit heard the story, he was very angry at the wicked and deceitful badger, and told the old man to leave everything to him, and he would avenge his wife's death. The farmer was at last comforted, and wiping away his tears, thanked the rabbit for his goodness in coming to him in his distress. The rabbit, seeing that the farmer was growing calmer, went back to his home to lay his plans for the punishment of the badger. The next day the weather was fine, and the rabbit went out to find the badger. He was not to be seen in the woods or on the hillside or in the fields anywhere, so the rabbit went to his den and found the badger hiding there, for the animal had been afraid to show himself ever since he had escaped from the farmer's house, for fear of the old man's wrath. The rabbit called out, "Why are you not out on such a beautiful day? Come out with me, and we will go and cut grass on the hills together." The badger, never doubting but that the rabbit was his friend, willingly consented to go out with him, only too glad to get away from the neighborhood of the farmer and the fear of meeting him. The rabbit led the way miles away from their homes, out on the hills where the grass grew tall and thick and sweet. They both set to work to cut down as much as they could carry home, to store it up for their winter's food. When they had each cut down all they wanted, they tied it in bundles and then started homewards, each carrying his bundle of grass on his back. This time, the rabbit made the badger go first. When they had gone a little way, the rabbit took out a flint and steel, and striking it over the badger's back as he stepped along in front, set his bundle of grass on fire. The badger heard the flint striking and asked, "What is that noise?" "Crack, crack." "Oh, that is nothing," replied the rabbit. "I only said crack, crack, because this mountain is called Crackling Mountain." The fire soon spread in the bundle of dry grass on the badger's back. The badger, hearing the crackle of the burning grass, asked, "What is that?" "Now we have come to the burning mountain," answered the rabbit. By this time, the bundle was nearly burned out, and all the hair had been burned off the badger's back. He now knew what had happened by the smell of the smoke of the burning grass. Screaming with pain, the badger ran as fast as he could to his hole. The rabbit followed and found him lying on his bed, groaning with pain. "What an unlucky fellow you are," said the rabbit. "I can't imagine how this happened. I will bring you some medicine which will heal your back quickly." The rabbit went away glad and smiling, to think that the punishment upon the badger had already begun. He hoped that the badger would die of his burns, for he felt that nothing could be too bad for the animal, who was guilty of murdering a poor, helpless old woman who had trusted him. He went home and made an ointment by mixing some sauce and red pepper together. He carried this to the badger, but before putting it on, he told him that it would cause him great pain, but that he must bear it patiently, because it was a very wonderful medicine for burns and scalds and such wounds. The badger thanked him and begged him to apply it at once. but no language can describe the agony of the badger as soon as the red pepper had been pasted all over his sore back. He rolled over and howled loudly. The rabbit, looking on, felt that the farmer's wife was beginning to be avenged. The badger was in bed for about a month, but at last, in spite of the red pepper application, his burns healed, and he got well. When the rabbit saw that the badger was getting well, he thought of another plan by which he could compass the creature's death. So he went one day to pay the badger a visit and to congratulate him on his recovery. During the conversation, the rabbit mentioned that he was going fishing and described how pleasant fishing was when the weather was fine and the sea smooth. The badger listened with pleasure to the rabbit's account of the way he passed his time now, and forgot all his pains and his month's illness, and thought what fun it would be if he could go fishing too. So he asked the rabbit if he would take him the next time he went out to fish. This was just what the rabbit wanted, so he agreed. Then he went home and built 2 boats, one of wood and the other of clay. At last they were both finished, and as the rabbit stood and looked at his work, he felt that all his trouble would be well rewarded if his plan succeeded, and he could manage to kill the wicked badger now. The day came when the rabbit had arranged to take the badger fishing. He kept the wooden boat himself and gave the badger the clay boat. The badger, who knew nothing about boats, was delighted with his new boat and thought how kind it was of the rabbit to give it to him. They both got into their boats and set out. After going some distance from the shore, the rabbit proposed that they should try their boats and see which one could go the quickest. The badger fell in with the proposal, and they both set to work to row as fast as they could for some time. In the middle of the race, the badger found his boat going to pieces, for the water now began to soften the clay. He cried out in great fear to the rabbit to help him, but the rabbit answered that he was avenging the old woman's murder, and that this had been his intention all along, and that he was happy to think that the badger had at last met his deserts for all his evil crimes, and was to drown with no one to help him. Then he raised his oar and struck at the badger with all his strength, till he fell with the sinking clay boat and was seen no more. Thus, at last, he kept his promise to the old farmer. The rabbit now turned and rowed shorewards, and having landed and pulled his boat upon the beach, hurried back to tell the old farmer everything, and how the badger, his enemy, had been killed. The old farmer thanked him with tears in his eyes. He said that till now he could never sleep at night or be at peace in the daytime, thinking of how his wife's death was unavenged, but from this time he would be able to sleep and eat as of old. He begged the rabbit to stay with him and share his home, so from this day the rabbit went to stay with the old farmer, and they both lived together as good friends to the end of their days. The story of the old man who made withered trees to flower. Long, long ago there lived an old man and his wife who supported themselves by cultivating a small plot of land. Their life had been a very happy and peaceful one, save for one great sorrow, and this was, they had no child. Their only pet was a dog named Shiro, and on him they lavished all the affection of their old age. Indeed, they loved him so much that whenever they had anything nice to eat, they denied themselves to give it to Shiro. Now Shiro means white, and he was so called because of his color. He was a real Japanese dog and very like a small wolf in appearance. The happiest hour of the day, both for the old man and his dog, was when the man returned from his work in the field, and having finished his frugal supper of rice and vegetables, would take what he had saved from the meal out to the little veranda that ran round the cottage. Sure enough, Shiro was waiting for his master and the evening titbit. Then the old man said, "Chin, chin," and Shiro sat up and begged, and his master gave him the food. Next door to this good old couple, there lived another old man and his wife, who were both wicked and cruel, and who hated their good neighbors and the dog Shiro with all their might. Whenever Shiro happened to look into their kitchen, they at once kicked him or threw something at him, sometimes even wounding him. One day, Shiro was heard barking for a long time in the field at the back of his master's house. The old man, thinking that perhaps some birds were attacking the corn, hurried out to see what was the matter. As soon as Shiro saw his master, he ran to meet him, wagging his tail, and seizing the end of his kimono, dragged him under a large yenoki tree. Here he began to dig very industriously with his paws, yelping with joy all the time. The old man, unable to understand what it all meant, stood looking on in bewilderment. But Shiro went on barking and digging with all his might. The thought that something might be hidden beneath the tree, and that the dog had scented it, at last struck the old man. He ran back to the house, fetched his spade, and began to dig the ground at that spot. What was his astonishment when, after digging for some time, he came upon a heap of old and valuable coins, and the deeper he dug, the more gold coins did he find. So intent was the old man on his work that he never saw the cross face of his neighbor peering at him through the bamboo hedge. At last all the gold coins lay shining on the ground. Shiro sat by erect with pride, and looking fondly at his master as if to say, "You see, though only a dog, I can make some return for all the kindness you show me." The old man ran in to call his wife, and together they carried home the treasure. Thus in one day the poor old man became rich. His gratitude to the faithful dog knew no bounds, and he loved and petted him more than ever, if that were possible. The cross old neighbor, attracted by Shiro's barking, had been an unseen and envious witness of the finding of the treasure. He began to think that he too would like to find a fortune. So a few days later he called at the old man's house, and very ceremoniously asked permission to borrow Shiro for a short time. Shiro's master thought this a strange request, because he knew quite well that not only did his neighbor not love his pet dog, but that he never lost an opportunity of striking and tormenting him whenever the dog crossed his path. But the good old man was too kind-hearted to refuse his neighbor, so he consented to lend the dog on condition that he should be taken great care of. The wicked old man returned to his home with an evil smile on his face, and told his wife how he had succeeded in his crafty intentions. He then took his spade and hastened to his own field, forcing the unwilling Shiro to follow him. As soon as he reached a yenoki tree, he said to the dog threateningly, "If there were gold coins under your master's tree, there must also be gold coins under my tree. You must find them for me. Where are they? Where? Where?" And catching hold of Shiro's neck, he held the dog's head to the ground so that Shiro began to scratch and dig in order to free himself from the horrid old man's grasp. The old man was very pleased when he saw the dog begin to scratch and dig, for he at once supposed that some gold coins lay buried under his tree as well as under his neighbor's, and that the dog had scented them as before. So pushing Shiro away, he began to dig himself, but there was nothing to be found. As he went on digging, a foul smell was noticeable, and he at last came upon a refuse heap. The old man's disgust can be imagined. This soon gave way to anger. He had seen his neighbor's good fortune, and hoping for the same luck himself, he had borrowed the dog Shiro, and now, just as he seemed on the point of finding what he sought, only a horrid-smelling refuse heap had rewarded him for a morning's digging. Instead of blaming his own greed for his disappointment, he blamed the poor dog. He seized his spade and with all his strength struck Shiro and killed him on the spot. He then threw the dog's body into the hole which he had dug in the hope of finding a treasure of gold coins, and covered it over with the earth. Then he returned to the house, telling no one, not even his wife, what he had done. After waiting several days, as the dog Shiro did not return, his master began to grow anxious. Day after day went by, and the good old man waited in vain. Then he went to his neighbor and asked him to give him back his dog. Without any shame or hesitation, the wicked neighbor answered that he had killed Shiro because of his bad behavior. At this dreadful news, Shiro's master wept many sad and bitter tears. Great indeed was his woeful surprise, but he was too good and gentle to reproach his bad neighbor. Learning that Shiro was buried under the yenoki tree in the field, he asked the old man to give him the tree in remembrance of his poor dog Shiro. Even the cross old neighbor could not refuse such a simple request, so he consented to give the old man the tree under which Shiro lay buried. Shiro's master then cut the tree down and carried it home. Out of the trunk, he made a mortar. In this, his wife put some rice, and he began to pound it with the intention of making a festival to the memory of his dog Shiro. A strange thing happened. His wife put the rice into the mortar, and no sooner had he begun to pound it to make the cakes than it began to increase in quantity gradually till it was about 5 times the original amount, and the cakes were turned out of the mortar as if an invisible hand were at work. When the old man and his wife saw this, they understood that it was a reward to them from Shiro for their faithful love to him. They tasted the cakes and found them nicer than any other food. So from this time, they never troubled about food, for they lived upon the cakes with which the mortar never ceased to supply them. The greedy neighbor, hearing of this new piece of good luck, was filled with envy as before and called on the old man. and asked leave to borrow the wonderful mortar for a short time, pretending that he, too, sorrowed for the death of Shiro and wished to make cakes for a festival to the dog's memory. The old man did not in the least wish to lend it to his cruel neighbor, but he was too kind to refuse. So the envious man carried home the mortar, but he never brought it back. Several days passed, and Shiro's master waited in vain for the mortar, so he went to call on the borrower and asked him to be good enough to return the mortar if he had finished with it. He found him sitting by a big fire made of pieces of wood. On the ground lay what looked very much like pieces of a broken mortar. In answer to the old man's inquiry, the wicked neighbor answered haughtily, "Have you come to ask me for your mortar? I broke it to pieces, and now I am making a fire of the wood. For when I tried to pound cakes in it, only some horrid smelling stuff came out." The good old man said, "I am very sorry for that. It is a great pity you did not ask me for the cakes if you wanted them. I would have given you as many as ever you wanted. Now please give me the ashes of the mortar, as I wish to keep them in remembrance of my dog." The neighbor consented at once, and the old man carried home a basket full of ashes. Not long after this, the old man accidentally scattered some of the ashes made by the burning of the mortar on the trees of his garden. A wonderful thing happened. It was late in autumn, and all the trees had shed their leaves, but no sooner did the ashes touch their branches than the cherry trees, the plum trees, and all other blossoming shrubs burst into bloom, so that the old man's garden was suddenly transformed into a beautiful picture of spring. The old man's delight knew no bounds, and he carefully preserved the remaining ashes. The story of the old man's garden spread far and wide, and people from far and near came to see the wonderful sight. One day, soon after this, the old man heard someone knocking at his door, and going to the porch to see who it was. He was surprised to see a knight standing there. This knight told him that he was a retainer of a great daimyo, earl, that one of the favorite cherry trees in this nobleman's garden had withered, and that though everyone in his service had tried all manner of means to revive it, none took effect. The knight was sore perplexed when he saw what great displeasure the loss of his favorite cherry tree caused the daimyo. At this point, fortunately, they had heard that there was a wonderful old man who could make withered trees to blossom, and that his lord had sent him to ask the old man to come to him. "And," added the knight, "I shall be very much obliged if you will come at once." The good old man was greatly surprised at what he heard, but respectfully followed the knight to the nobleman's palace. The daimyo, who had been impatiently awaiting the old man's coming, as soon as he saw him asked him at once, "Are you the old man who can make withered trees flower even out of season?" The old man made an obeisance and replied, "I am that old man." Then the daimyo said, "You must make that dead cherry tree in my garden blossom again by means of your famous ashes. I shall look on." Then they all went into the garden, the daimyo and his retainers, and the ladies in waiting, who carried the daimyo's sword. The old man now tucked up his kimono and made ready to climb the tree. Saying, "Excuse me," he took the pot of ashes which he had brought with him and began to climb the tree, everyone watching his movements with great interest. At last he climbed to the spot where the tree divided into two great branches, and taking up his position here, the old man sat down and scattered the ashes right and left all over the branches and twigs. Wonderful indeed was the result. The withered tree at once burst into full bloom. The daimyo was so transported with joy that he looked as if he would go mad. He rose to his feet and spread out his fan, calling the old man down from the tree. He himself gave the old man a wine cup filled with the best sake, and rewarded him with much silver and gold and many other precious things. The daimyo ordered that henceforth the old man should call himself by the name of Hanasaka Jiji, or the old man who makes the trees to blossom, and that henceforth all were to recognize him by this name, and he sent him home with great honor. The wicked neighbor, as before, heard of the good old man's fortune, and of all that had so auspiciously befallen him, and he could not suppress all the envy and jealousy that filled his heart. He called to mind how he had failed in his attempt to find the gold coins, and then in making the magic cakes. This time surely he must succeed if he imitated the old man, who made withered trees to flower simply by sprinkling ashes on them. This would be the simplest task of all. So he set to work, and gathered together all the ashes which remained in the fireplace from the burning of the wonderful mortar. Then he set out in the hope of finding some great man to employ him, calling out loudly as he went along, "Here comes the wonderful man who can make withered trees blossom. Here comes the old man who can make dead trees blossom." The daimyo in his palace heard this cry and said, "That must be the Hanasaka Jiji passing. I have nothing to do today. Let him try his art again. It will amuse me to look on." So the retainers went out and brought in the impostor before their lord. The satisfaction of false old man can now be imagined. But the daimyo, looking at him, thought it strange that he was not at all like the old man he had seen before. So he asked him, "Are you the man whom I named Hanasaka Jiji?" And the envious neighbor answered with a lie, "Yes, my lord." "That is strange," said the daimyo. "I thought there was only one Hanasaka Jiji in the world. Has he now some disciples?" "I am the true Hanasaka Jiji. The one who came to you before was only my disciple," replied the old man again. "Then you must be more skillful than the other. Try what you can do and let me see." The envious neighbor, with the daimyo and his court following, then went into the garden and, approaching a dead tree, took out a handful of the ashes which he carried with him and scattered them over the tree. But not only did the tree not burst into flower, but not even a bud came forth. Thinking that he had not used enough ashes, the old man took handfuls and again sprinkled them over the withered tree, but all to no effect. After trying several times, the ashes were blown into the daimyo's eyes. This made him very angry, and he ordered his retainers to arrest the false Hanasaka Jiji at once and put him in prison for an impostor. From this imprisonment, the wicked old man was never freed. Thus did he meet with punishment at last for all his evil doings. The good old man, however, with the treasure of gold coins which Shiro had found for him, and with all the gold and the silver which the daimyo had showered on him, became a rich and prosperous man in his old age, and lived a long and happy life, beloved and respected by all. The Jellyfish and the Monkey. Long, long ago in old Japan, the kingdom of the sea was governed by a wonderful king. He was called Rin-Jin, or the Dragon King of the Sea. His power was immense, for he was the ruler of all sea creatures, both great and small, and in his keeping were the jewels of the ebb and flow of the tide. The jewel of the ebbing tide, when thrown into the ocean, caused the sea to recede from the land, and the jewel of the flowing tide made the waves to rise mountains high and to flow in upon the shore like a tidal wave. The palace of Rin-Jin was at the bottom of the sea and was so beautiful that no one has ever seen anything like it, even in dreams. The walls were of coral, the roof of jade stone and chrysoprase, and the floors were of the finest mother of pearl. But the Dragon King, in spite of his wide-spreading kingdom, his beautiful palace, and all its wonders, and his power which none disputed throughout the whole sea, was not at all happy, for he reigned alone. At last he thought that if he married he would not only be happier, but also more powerful. So he decided to take a wife. Calling all his fish retainers together, he chose several of them as ambassadors to go through the sea and seek for a young dragon princess who would be his bride. At last they returned to the palace, bringing with them a lovely young dragon. Her scales were of glittering green like the wings of summer beetles. Her eyes threw out glances of fire, and she was dressed in gorgeous robes. All the jewels of the sea worked in with embroidery adorned them. The king fell in love with her at once, and the wedding ceremony was celebrated with great splendor. Every living thing in the sea, from the great whales down to the little shrimps, came in shoals to offer their congratulations to the bride and bridegroom, and to wish them a long and prosperous life. Never had there been such an assemblage or such gay festivities in the fish world before. The train of bearers who carried the bride's possessions to her new home seemed to reach across the waves from one end of the sea to the other. Each fish carried a phosphorescent lantern and was dressed in ceremonial robes gleaming blue and pink and silver, and the waves as they rose and fell and broke that night seemed to be rolling masses of white and green fire, for the phosphorus shone with double brilliancy in honor of the event. Now for a time the Dragon King and his bride lived very happily. They loved each other dearly, and the bridegroom day after day took delight in showing his bride all the wonders and treasures of his coral palace, and she was never tired of wandering with him through its vast halls and gardens. Life seemed to them both like a long summer's day. 2 months passed in this happy way, and then the Dragon Queen fell ill and was obliged to stay in bed. The king was sorely troubled when he saw his precious bride so ill, and at once sent for the fish doctor to come and give her some medicine. He gave special orders to the servants to nurse her carefully, and to wait upon her with diligence, But in spite of all the nurses' assiduous care and the medicine that the doctor prescribed, the young queen showed no signs of recovery, but grew daily worse. Then the Dragon King interviewed the doctor and blamed him for not curing the queen. The doctor was alarmed at Rin Jin's evident displeasure and excused his want of skill by saying that although he knew the right kind of medicine to give the invalid, it was impossible to find it in the sea. "Do you mean to tell me that you can't get the medicine here?" asked the Dragon King. "It is just as you say," said the doctor. "Tell me what it is you want for the queen," demanded Rin Jin. "I want the liver of a live monkey," answered the doctor. "The liver of a live monkey. Of course that will be most difficult to get," said the king. "If we could only get that for the queen, Her Majesty would soon recover," said the doctor. "Very well, that decides it. We must get it somehow or other." "But where are we most likely to find a monkey?" asked the king. Then the doctor told the Dragon King that some distance to the south, there was a monkey island where a great many monkeys lived. "If only you could capture one of these monkeys," said the doctor. "How can any of my people capture a monkey?" said the Dragon King, greatly puzzled. "The monkeys live on dry land, while we live in the water, and out of our element we are quite powerless. I don't see what we can do." "That has been my difficulty too," said the doctor. "But amongst your innumerable servants, you surely can find one who can go on shore for that express purpose." "Something must be done," said the king, and calling his chief steward, he consulted him on the matter. The chief steward thought for some time, and then, as if struck by a sudden thought, said joyfully, "I know what we must do. There is the courage, Jellyfish. He is certainly ugly to look at, but he is proud of being able to walk on land with his 4 legs like a tortoise. Let us send him to the island of monkeys to catch one." The jellyfish was then summoned to the king's presence and was told by His Majesty what was required of him. The jellyfish, on being told of the unexpected mission which was to be entrusted to him, looked very troubled and said that he had never been to the island in question, and as he had never had any experience in catching monkeys, he was afraid that he would not be able to get one. "Well," said the chief steward, "if you depend on your strength or dexterity, you will never catch a monkey. The only way is to play a trick on one." "How can I play a trick on a monkey?" "I don't know how to do it," said the perplexed jellyfish. "This is what you must do," said the wily chief steward. "When you approach the island of monkeys and meet some of them, you must try to get very friendly with one. Tell him that you are a servant of the Dragon King and invite him to come and visit you and see the Dragon King's palace. Try and describe to him, as vividly as you can, the grandeur of the palace and the wonders of the sea, so as to arouse his curiosity and make him long to see it all." "But how am I to get the monkey here?" "You know monkeys don't swim," said the reluctant jellyfish. "You must carry him on your back." "What is the use of your shell if you can't do that?" said the chief steward. "Won't he be very heavy?" queried Kurag again. "You mustn't mind that, for you are working for the Dragon King," replied the chief steward. I will do my best then, said the jellyfish, and he swam away from the palace and started off towards the monkey island. Swimming swiftly, he reached his destination in a few hours and landed by a convenient wave upon the shore. On looking round, he saw not far away a big pine tree with drooping branches, and on one of those branches was just what he was looking for, a live monkey. I'm in luck, thought the jellyfish. Now I must flatter the creature and try to entice him to come back with me to the palace, and my part will be done. So the jellyfish slowly walked towards the pine tree. In those ancient days, the jellyfish had 4 legs and a hard shell like a tortoise. When he got to the pine tree, he raised his voice and said, "How do you do, Mr. Monkey? Isn't it a lovely day?" "A very fine day," answered the monkey from the tree. "I have never seen you in this part of the world before. Where have you come from? And what is your name?" "My name is Kurage or Jellyfish. I am one of the servants of the Dragon King. I have heard so much of your beautiful island that I have come on purpose to see it," answered the jellyfish. "I am very glad to see you," said the monkey. "By the by," said the jellyfish, "have you ever seen the palace of the Dragon King of the sea where I live?" "I have often heard of it, but I have never seen it," answered the monkey. "Then you ought most surely to come. It is a great pity for you to go through life without seeing it. The beauty of the palace is beyond all description. It is certainly to my mind the most lovely place in the world," said the jellyfish. "Is it so beautiful as all that?" asked the monkey in astonishment. Then the jellyfish saw his chance and went on describing to the best of his ability the beauty and grandeur of the Sea King's palace, and the wonders of the garden with its curious trees of white, pink, and red coral, and the still more curious fruits like great jewels hanging on the branches. The monkey grew more and more interested, and as he listened, he came down the tree step by step, so as not to lose a word of the wonderful story. "I have got him at last," thought the jellyfish, but aloud he said, "Mr. Monkey, I must now go back. As you have never seen the palace of the Dragon King, won't you avail yourself of this splendid opportunity by coming with me? I shall then be able to act as guide and show you all the sights of the sea, which will be even more wonderful to you, a landlubber." "I should love to go," said the monkey, "but how am I to cross the water? I can't swim, as you surely know." "There is no difficulty about that. I can carry you on my back." "That will be troubling you too much," said the monkey. "I can do it quite easily. I am stronger than I look, so you needn't hesitate," said the jellyfish, and taking the monkey on his back, he stepped into the sea. "Keep very still, Mr. Monkey," said the jellyfish. "You mustn't fall into the sea. I am responsible for your safe arrival at the king's palace. Please don't go so fast, or I am sure I shall fall off," said the monkey. Thus they went along, the jellyfish skimming through the waves with the monkey sitting on his back. When they were about halfway, the jellyfish, who knew very little of anatomy, began to wonder if the monkey had his liver with him or not. "Mr. Monkey, tell me, have you such a thing as a liver with you?" The monkey was very much surprised at this queer question and asked what the jellyfish wanted with a liver. "That is the most important thing of all," said the stupid jellyfish. "So as soon as I recollected it, I asked you if you had yours with you." "Why is my liver so important to you?" asked the monkey. "Oh, you will learn the reason later," said the jellyfish. The monkey grew more and more curious and suspicious, and urged the jellyfish to tell him for what his liver was wanted, and ended up by appealing to his hearer's feelings by saying that he was very troubled at what he had been told. Then the jellyfish, seeing how anxious the monkey looked, was sorry for him and told him everything. How the dragon queen had fallen ill, and how the doctor had said that only the liver of a live monkey would cure her, and how the dragon king had sent him to find one. "Now I have done as I was told, and as soon as we arrive at the palace, the doctor will want your liver, so I feel sorry for you," said the silly jellyfish. The poor monkey was horrified when he learnt all this, and very angry at the trick played upon him. He trembled with fear at the thought of what was in store for him. But the monkey was a clever animal, and he thought it the wisest plan not to show any sign of the fear he felt, so he tried to calm himself and to think of some way by which he might escape. "The doctor means to cut me open and then take my liver out. Why, I shall die," thought the monkey. At last a bright thought struck him, so he said quite cheerfully to the jellyfish, "What a pity it was, Mr. Jellyfish, that you did not speak of this before we left the island. If I had told why I wanted you to accompany me, you would certainly have refused to come," answered the jellyfish. "You are quite mistaken," said the monkey. "Monkeys can very well spare a liver or two, especially when it is wanted for the dragon queen of the sea. If I had only guessed of what you were in need, I should have presented you with one without waiting to be asked. I have several livers, but the greatest pity is that as you did not speak in time, I have left all my livers hanging on the pine tree." "Have you left your liver behind you?" asked the jellyfish. "Yes," said the cunning monkey. "During the daytime I usually leave my liver hanging up on the branch of a tree, as it is very much in the way when I am climbing about from tree to tree. Today, listening to your interesting conversation, I quite forgot it and left it behind when I came off with you. If only you had spoken in time, I should have remembered it and should have brought it along with me." The jellyfish was very disappointed when he heard this, for he believed every word the monkey said. The monkey was of no good without a liver. Finally, the jellyfish stopped and told the monkey so. "Well," said the monkey, "that is soon remedied. I am really sorry to think of all your trouble, but if you will only take me back to the place where you found me, I shall soon be able to get my liver." The jellyfish did not at all like the idea of going all the way back to the island again, but the monkey assured him that if he would be so kind as to take him back, he would get his very best liver and bring it with him the next time. Thus persuaded, the jellyfish turned his course towards the monkey island once more. No sooner had the jellyfish reached the shore than the sly monkey landed, and getting up into the pine tree where the jellyfish had first seen him, he cut several capers amongst the branches with joy at being safe home again. and then looking down at the jellyfish said, "So many thanks for all the trouble you have taken. Please present my compliments to the Dragon King on your return." The jellyfish wondered at this speech and the mocking tone in which it was uttered. Then he asked the monkey if it wasn't his intention to come with him at once after getting his liver. The monkey replied laughingly that he couldn't afford to lose his liver. It was too precious. "But remember your promise," pleaded the jellyfish, now very discouraged. "That promise was false, and anyhow it is now broken," answered the monkey. Then he began to jeer at the jellyfish and told him that he had been deceiving him the whole time, that he had no wish to lose his life, which he certainly would have done had he gone on to the Sea King's palace, to the old doctor waiting for him, instead of persuading the jellyfish to return under false pretenses. "Of course, I won't give you my liver, but come and get it if you can," added the monkey mockingly from the tree. There was nothing for the jellyfish to do now but to repent of his stupidity and to return to the Dragon King of the Sea and to confess his failure. So he started sadly and slowly to swim back. The last thing he heard as he glided away, leaving the island behind him, was the monkey laughing at him. Meanwhile, the Dragon King, the doctor, the chief steward, and all the servants were waiting impatiently for the return of the jellyfish. When they caught sight of him approaching the palace, they hailed him with delight. They began to thank him profusely for all the trouble he had taken in going to Monkey Island, and then they asked him where the monkey was. Now the day of reckoning had come for the jellyfish. He quaked all over as he told his story, how he had brought the monkey halfway over the sea and then had stupidly let out the secret of his commission, how the monkey had deceived him by making him believe that he had left his liver behind him. The Dragon King's wrath was great, and he at once gave orders that the jellyfish was to be severely punished. The punishment was a horrible one. All the bones were to be drawn out from his living body, and he was to be beaten with sticks. The poor jellyfish, humiliated and horrified beyond all words, cried out for pardon. But the Dragon King's order had to be obeyed. The servants of the palace forthwith each brought out a stick and surrounded the jellyfish, and after pulling out his bones they beat him to a flat pulp, and then took him out beyond the palace gates and threw him into the water. Here he was left to suffer and repent his foolish chattering, and to grow accustomed to his new state of bonelessness. From this story it is evident that in former times the jellyfish once had a shell and bones something like a tortoise, but ever since the Dragon King's sentence was carried out on the ancestor of the jellyfishes, his descendants have all been soft and boneless, just as you see them today thrown up by the waves high upon the shores of Japan. The Mirror of Matsuyama, a story of old Japan. Long years ago in old Japan, there lived in the province of Echigo, a very remote part of Japan, even in these days, a man and his wife. When this story begins, they had been married for some years and were blessed with one little daughter. She was the joy and pride of both their lives, and in her they stored an endless source of happiness for their old age. What golden letter days in their memory were these that had marked her growing up from babyhood? The visit to the temple when she was just 30 days old, her proud mother carrying her robed in ceremonial kimono to be put under the patronage of the family's household. Then her first dolls festival, when her parents gave her a set of dolls and their miniature belongings to be added to as year succeeded year. And perhaps the most important occasion of all, on her 3rd birthday, when her first OBI, broad brocade sash of scarlet and gold was tied round her small waist, a sign that she had crossed the threshold of girlhood and left infancy behind. Now that she was 7 years of age and had learned to talk and to wait upon her parents in those several little ways, so dear to the hearts of fond parents, their cup of happiness seemed full. There could not be found, in the whole of the island empire, a happier little family. One day, there was much excitement in the home, for the father had been suddenly summoned to the capital on business. In these days of railways and jinrickshaws and other rapid modes of traveling, it is difficult to realize what such a journey as that from Matsuyama to Kyoto meant. The roads were rough and bad, and ordinary people had to walk every step of the way, whether the distance were 100 or several hundred miles. Indeed, in those days, it was as great an undertaking to go up to the capital as it is for a Japanese to make a voyage to Europe now. So the wife was very anxious while she helped her husband get ready for the long journey, knowing what an arduous task lay before him. Vainly she wished that she could accompany him, but the distance was too great for the mother and child to go. And besides that, it was the wife's duty to take care of the home. All was ready at last, and the husband stood in the porch with his little family round him. "Do not be anxious, I will come back soon," said the man. "While I am away, take care of everything, and especially of our little daughter. Yes, we shall be all right, but you must take care of yourself and delay not a day in coming back to us," said the wife, while the tears fell like rain from her eyes. The little girl was the only one to smile, for she was ignorant of the sorrow of parting and did not know that going to the capital was at all different from walking to the next village, which her father did very often. She ran to his side and caught hold of his long sleeve to keep him a moment. "Father, I will be very good while I am waiting for you to come back, so please bring me a present." As the father turned to take a last look at his weeping wife and smiling, eager child, he felt as if someone were pulling him back by the hair. So hard was it for him to leave them behind, for they had never been separated before. But he knew that he must go, for the call was imperative. With a great effort, he ceased to think, and resolutely turning away, he went quickly down the little garden and out through the gate. His wife, catching up the child in her arms, ran as far as the gate and watched him as he went down the road between the pines till he was lost in the haze of the distance, and all she could see was his quaint peaked hat, and at last that vanished too. "Now father is gone, you and I must take care of everything till he comes back," said the mother as she made her way back to the house. "Yes, I will be very good," said the child, nodding her head. "And when father comes home, please tell him how good I have been, and then perhaps he will give me a present. Father is sure to bring you something that you want very much. I know, for I asked him to bring you a doll. You must think of Father every day and pray for a safe journey till he comes back. Oh, yes, when he comes home again, how happy I shall be," said the child, clapping her hands and her face growing bright with joy at the glad thought. It seemed to the mother as she looked at the child's face that her love for her grew deeper and deeper. Then she set to work to make the winter clothes for the three of them. She set up her simple wooden spinning wheel and spun the thread before she began to weave the stuffs. In the intervals of her work, she directed the little girl's games and taught her to read the old stories of her country. Thus did the wife find consolation in work during the lonely days of her husband's absence. While the time was thus slipping quickly by in the quiet home, the husband finished his business and returned. It would have been difficult for anyone who did not know the man well to recognize him. He had traveled day after day, exposed to all weathers for about a month altogether, and was sunburnt to bronze. But his fond wife and child knew him at a glance and flew to meet him from either side, each catching hold of one of his sleeves in their eager greeting. Both the man and his wife rejoiced to find each other well. It seemed a very long time to all till, the mother and child helping, his straw sandals were untied, his large umbrella hat taken off, and he was again in their midst in the old familiar sitting room that had been so empty while he was away. As soon as they had sat down on the white mats, the father opened a bamboo basket that he had brought in with him and took out a beautiful doll and a lacquer box full of cakes. "Here," he said to the little girl, "is a present for you. It is a prize for taking care of mother and the house so well while I was away." "Thank you," said the child as she bowed her head to the ground and then put out her hand, just like a little maple leaf with its eager, widespread fingers, to take the doll and the box, both of which, coming from the capital, were prettier than anything she had ever seen. No words can tell how delighted the little girl was. Her face seemed as if it would melt with joy, and she had no eyes and no thought for anything else. Again, the husband dived into the basket and brought out this time a square wooden box, carefully tied up with red and white string, and handing it to his wife said, "And this is for you." The wife took the box and, opening it carefully, took out a metal disc with a handle attached. One side was bright and shining like a crystal, and the other was covered with raised figures of pine trees and stalks, which had been carved out of its smooth surface in lifelike reality. Never had she seen such a thing in her life, for she had been born and bred in the rural province of Echigo. She gazed into the shining disc, and looking up with surprise and wonder pictured on her face, she said, "I see somebody looking at me in this round thing. What is it that you have given me?" The husband laughed and said, "Why, it is your own face that you see. What I have brought you is called a mirror, and whoever looks into its clear surface can see their own form reflected there. Although there are none to be found in this out-of-the-way place, yet they have been in use in the capital from the most ancient times. There the mirror is considered a very necessary requisite for a woman to possess. There is an old proverb that as the sword is the soul of a samurai, so is the mirror the soul of a woman. And according to popular tradition, a woman's mirror is an index to her own heart. If she keeps it bright and clear, so is her heart pure and good. It is also one of the treasures that form the insignia of the emperor. So you must lay great store by your mirror and use it carefully. The wife listened to all her husband told her and was pleased at learning so much that was new to her. She was still more pleased at the precious gift, his token of remembrance while he had been away. If the mirror represents my soul, I shall certainly treasure it as a valuable possession, and never will I use it carelessly. Saying so, she lifted it as high as her forehead in grateful acknowledgement of the gift, and then shut it up in its box and put it away. The wife saw that her husband was very tired and set about serving the evening meal and making everything as comfortable as she could for him. It seemed to the little family as if they had not known what true happiness was before. So glad were they to be together again. And this evening, the father had much to tell of his journey and of all he had seen at the great capital. Time passed away in the peaceful home, and the parents saw their fondest hopes realized as their daughter grew from childhood into a beautiful girl of 16. As a gem of priceless value is held in its proud owner's hand, so had they reared her with unceasing love and care. And now their pains were more than doubly rewarded. What a comfort she was to her mother as she went about the house taking her part in the housekeeping, and how proud her father was of her, for she daily reminded him of her mother when he had first married her. But alas, in this world nothing lasts forever. Even the moon is not always perfect in shape, but loses its roundness with time, and flowers bloom and then fade. So at last the happiness of this family was broken up by a great sorrow. The good and gentle wife and mother was one day taken ill. In the first days of her illness, the father and daughter thought that it was only a cold and were not particularly anxious. But the days went by, and still the mother did not get better. She only grew worse, and the doctor was puzzled. For in spite of all he did, the poor woman grew weaker day by day. The father and daughter were stricken with grief, and day or night the girl never left her mother's side. But in spite of all their efforts, the woman's life was not to be saved. One day, as the girl sat near her mother's bed, trying to hide with the cheery smile the gnawing trouble at her heart, the mother roused herself, and taking her daughter's hand, gazed earnestly and lovingly into her eyes. Her breath was labored, and she spoke with difficulty. "My daughter, I am sure that nothing can save me now. When I am dead, promise me to take care of your dear father and to try to be a good and dutiful woman." "Oh, mother," said the girl, as the tears rushed to her eyes, "you must not say such things. All you have to do is to make haste and get well. That will bring the greatest happiness to father and myself." "Yes, I know, and it is a comfort to me in my last days to know how greatly you long for me to get better. But it is not to be. Do not look so sorrowful, for it was so ordained in my previous state of existence that I should die in this life just at this time. Knowing this, I am quite resigned to my fate. And now, I have something to give you, whereby to remember me when I am gone." Putting her hand out, she took from the side of the pillow a square wooden box, tied up with a silken cord and tassels. Undoing this very carefully, she took out of the box the mirror that her husband had given her years ago. "When you were still a little child, your father went up to the capital and brought me back as a present this treasure. It is called a mirror. This I give you before I die. If after I have ceased to be in this life, you are lonely and long to see me sometimes, then take out this mirror, and in the clear and shining surface, you will always see me. So will you be able to meet with me often and tell me all your heart? And though I shall not be able to speak, I shall understand and sympathize with you, whatever may happen to you in the future." With these words, the dying woman handed the mirror to her daughter. The mind of the good mother seemed to be now at rest and sinking back without another word. Her spirit passed quietly away that day. The bereaved father and daughter were wild with grief, and they abandoned themselves to their bitter sorrow. They felt it to be impossible to take leave of the loved woman who till now had filled their whole lives, and to commit her body to the earth. But this frantic burst of grief passed, and then they took possession of their own hearts again, crushed though they were in resignation. In spite of this, the daughter's life seemed to her desolate. Her love for her dead mother did not grow less with time, and so keen was her remembrance that everything in daily life, even the falling of the rain and the blowing of the wind, reminded her of her mother's death and of all that they had loved and shared together. One day when her father was out and she was fulfilling her household duties alone, her loneliness and sorrow seemed more than she could bear. She threw herself down in her mother's room and wept as if her heart would break. Poor child, she longed just for one glimpse of the loved face, one sound of the voice calling her pet name, or for one moment's forgetfulness of the aching void in her heart. Suddenly, she sat up. Her mother's last words had rung through her memory, hitherto dulled by grief. "Oh, my mother told me when she gave me the mirror as a parting gift that whenever I looked into it, I should be able to meet her, to see her. I had nearly forgotten her last words. How stupid I am. I will get the mirror now and see if it can possibly be true." She dried her eyes quickly, and going to the cupboard, took out the box that contained the mirror, her heart beating with expectation as she lifted the mirror out and gazed into its smooth face. Behold, her mother's words were true. In the round mirror before her, she saw her mother's face, but oh, the joyful surprise! It was not her mother, thin and wasted by illness, but the young and beautiful woman as she remembered her, far back in the days of her own earliest childhood. It seemed to the girl that the face in the mirror must soon speak, almost that she heard the voice of her mother telling her again to grow up a good woman and a dutiful daughter. So earnestly did the eyes in the mirror look back into her own. It is certainly my mother's soul that I see. She knows how miserable I am without her, and she has come to comfort me. Whenever I long to see her, she will meet me here. How grateful I ought to be. And from this time, the weight of sorrow was greatly lightened for her young heart. Every morning, to gather strength for the day's duties before her, and every evening for consolation before she lay down to rest, did the young girl take out the mirror and gaze at the reflection, which in the simplicity of her innocent heart she believed to be her mother's soul. Daily she grew in the likeness of her dead mother's character, and was gentle and kind to all, and a dutiful daughter to her father. A year spent in mourning had thus passed away in the little household, when, by the advice of his relations, the man married again, and the daughter now found herself under the authority of a stepmother. It was a trying position, but her days spent in the recollection of her own beloved mother, and of trying to be what that mother would wish her to be, had made the young girl docile and patient, and she now determined to be filial and dutiful to her father's wife in all respect. Everything went on apparently smoothly in the family for some time under the new regime. There were no winds or waves of discord to ruffle the surface of everyday life, and the father was content. But it is a woman's danger to be petty and mean, and stepmothers are proverbial all the world over, and this one's heart was not as her first smiles were. As the days and weeks grew into months, the stepmother began to treat the motherless girl unkindly, and to try and come between the father and child. Sometimes she went to her husband and complained of her stepdaughter's behavior, but the father, knowing that this was to be expected, took no notice of her ill-natured complaints. Instead of lessening his affection for his daughter, as the woman desired, her grumblings only made him think of her the more. The woman soon saw that he began to show more concern for his lonely child than before. This did not please her at all, and she began to turn over in her mind how she could, by some means or other, drive her stepchild out of the house. So crooked did the woman's heart become. She watched the girl carefully, and one day, peeping into her room in the early morning, she thought she discovered a grave enough sin of which to accuse the child to her father. The woman herself was a little frightened too at what she had seen, so she went at once to her husband, and wiping away some false tears, she said in a sad voice, "Please, give me permission to leave you today." The man was completely taken by surprise at the suddenness of her request, and wondered whatever was the matter. "Do you find it so disagreeable," he asked, "in my house, that you can stay no longer?" No, it has nothing to do with you. Even in my dreams I have never thought that I wish to leave your side, but if I go on living here, I am in danger of losing my life, so I think it best for all concerned that you should allow me to go home. And the woman began to weep afresh. Her husband, distressed to see her so unhappy, and thinking that he could not have heard aright, said, "Tell me what you mean. How is your life in danger here?" "I will tell you since you ask me. Your daughter dislikes me as her stepmother. For some time past, she has shut herself up in her room, morning and evening, and looking in as I pass by. I am convinced that she has made an image of me and is trying to kill me by magic art, cursing me daily. It is not safe for me to stay here, Such being the case, indeed, I must go away. We cannot live under the same roof anymore." The husband listened to the dreadful tale, but he could not believe his gentle daughter guilty of such an evil act. He knew that by popular superstition, people believed that one person could cause the gradual death of another by making an image of the hated one and cursing it daily. But where had his young daughter learned such knowledge? The thing was impossible. Yet he remembered having noticed that his daughter stayed much in her room of late and kept herself away from everyone, even when visitors came to the house. Putting this fact together with his wife's alarm, he thought that there might be something to account for the strange story. His heart was torn between doubting his wife and trusting his child, and he knew not what to do. He decided to go at once to his daughter and try to find out the truth. Comforting his wife and assuring her that her fears were groundless, he glided quietly to his daughter's room. The girl had for a long time past been very unhappy. She had tried by amiability and obedience to show her goodwill and to mollify the new wife, and to break down that wall of prejudice and misunderstanding that she knew generally stood between step-parents and their stepchildren. But she soon found that her efforts were in vain. The stepmother never trusted her and seemed to misinterpret all her actions, and the poor child knew very well that she often carried unkind and untrue tales to her father. She could not help comparing her present unhappy condition with the time when her own mother was alive, only a little more than a year ago. So great a change in this short time. Morning and evening, she wept over the remembrance. Whenever she could, she went to her room and, sliding the screens to, took out the mirror and gazed as she thought at her mother's face. It was the only comfort that she had in these wretched days. Her father found her occupied in this way. Pushing aside the fusama, he saw her bending over something or other very intently. Looking over her shoulder to see who was entering her room, the girl was surprised to see her father, for he generally sent for her when he wished to speak to her. She was also confused at being found looking at the mirror, for she had never told anyone of her mother's last promise, but had kept it as the sacred secret of her heart. So before turning to her father, she slipped the mirror into her long sleeve. Her father, noting her confusion and her act of hiding something, said in a severe manner, "Daughter, what are you doing here? And what is that you have hidden in your sleeve?" The girl was frightened by her father's severity. Never had he spoken to her in such a tone. Her confusion changed to apprehension, her color from scarlet to white. She sat dumb and shamefaced, unable to reply. Appearances were certainly against her. The young girl looked guilty, and the father, thinking that perhaps, after all, what his wife had told him was true, spoke angrily. Then, "Is it really true that you are daily cursing your stepmother and praying for her death? Have you forgotten what I told you, that although she is your stepmother, you must be obedient and loyal to her? What evil spirit has taken possession of your heart that you should be so wicked? You have certainly changed, my daughter. What has made you so disobedient and unfaithful?" And the father's eyes filled with sudden tears to think that he should have to upbraid his daughter in this way. She on her part did not know what he meant, for she had never heard of the superstition that by praying over an image it is possible to cause the death of a hated person. But she saw that she must speak and clear herself somehow. She loved her father dearly and could not bear the idea of his anger. She put out her hand on his knee deprecatingly. "Father, Father, do not say such dreadful things to me. I am still your obedient child. Indeed I am. However stupid I may be, I should never be able to curse anyone who belonged to you, much less pray for the death of one you love. Surely someone has been telling you lies, and you are dazed, and you know not what you say? Or some evil spirit has taken possession of your heart? As for me, I do not know. No, not so much as a dewdrop of the evil thing of which you accuse me." But the father remembered that she had hidden something away when he first entered the room, and even this earnest protest did not satisfy him. He wished to clear up his doubts once for all. "Then why are you always alone in your room these days? And tell me, what is that you have hidden in your sleeve? Show it to me at once." Then the daughter, though shy of confessing how she had cherished her mother's memory, saw that she must tell her father all in order to clear herself. So she slipped the mirror out from her long sleeve and laid it before him. "This," she said, "is what you saw me looking at just now." "Why?" he said in great surprise. "This is the mirror that I brought as a gift to your mother when I went up to the capital many years ago. And so, you have kept it all this time. Now, why do you spend so much of your time before this mirror?" Then she told him of her mother's last words and of how she had promised to meet her child whenever she looked into the glass. But still, the father could not understand the simplicity of his daughter's character in not knowing that what she saw reflected in the mirror was in reality her own face and not that of her mother. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I do not understand how you can meet the soul of your lost mother by looking in this mirror." "It is indeed true," said the girl. "And if you don't believe what I say, look for yourself." And she placed the mirror before her. There, looking back from the smooth metal disc, was her own sweet face. She pointed to the reflection seriously. "Do you doubt me still?" she asked earnestly, looking up into his face. With an exclamation of sudden understanding, the father smote his two hands together. "How stupid I am. At last I understand. Your face is as like your mother's as the two sides of a melon. Thus, you have looked at the reflection of your face all this time, thinking that you were brought face to face with your lost mother. You are truly a faithful child. It seems at first a stupid thing to have done, but it is not really so. It shows how deep has been your filial piety and how innocent your heart. Living in constant remembrance of your lost mother has helped you to grow like her in character. How clever it was of her to tell you to do this. I admire and respect you, my daughter, and I am ashamed to think that for one instant I believed your suspicious stepmother's story and suspected you of evil, and came with the intention of scolding you severely, while all this time you have been so true and good. Before you, I have no countenance left, and I beg you to forgive me. and here the father wept. He thought of how lonely the poor girl must have been, and of all that she must have suffered under her stepmother's treatment. His daughter steadfastly keeping her faith and simplicity in the midst of such adverse circumstances, bearing all her troubles with so much patience and amiability, made him compare her to the lotus, which rears its blossom of dazzling beauty out of the slime and mud of the moats and ponds, fitting emblem of a heart which keeps itself unsullied while passing through the world. The stepmother, anxious to know what would happen, had all this while been standing outside the room. She had grown interested and had gradually pushed the sliding screen back till she could see all that went on. At this moment, she suddenly entered the room, and dropping to the mats, she bowed her head over her outspread hands before her stepdaughter. "I am ashamed, I am ashamed," she exclaimed in broken tones. "I did not know what a filial child you were. Through no fault of yours, but with a stepmother's jealous heart, I have disliked you all the time. Hating you so much myself, it was but natural that I should think you reciprocated the feeling, and thus when I saw you retire so often to your room, I followed you. And when I saw you gaze daily into the mirror for long intervals, I concluded that you had found out how I disliked you, and that you were out of revenge trying to take my life by magic art. As long as I live, I shall never forget the wrong I have done you in so misjudging you and in causing your father to suspect you. From this day I throw away my old and wicked heart, and in its place I put a new one, clean and full of repentance. I shall think of you as a child that I have borne myself. I shall love and cherish you with all my heart, and thus try to make up for all the unhappiness I have caused you. Therefore, please throw into the water all that has gone before, and give me, I beg of you, some of the filial love that you have hitherto given to your own lost mother." Thus did the unkind stepmother humble herself and ask forgiveness of the girl she had so wronged. Such was the sweetness of the girl's disposition that she willingly forgave her stepmother and never bore a moment's resentment or malice towards her afterwards. The father saw by his wife's face that she was truly sorry for the past, and was greatly relieved to see the terrible misunderstanding wiped out of remembrance by both the wrongdoer and the wronged. From this time on, the three lived together as happily as fish in water. No such trouble ever darkened the home again, and the young girl gradually forgot that year of unhappiness in the tender love and care that her stepmother now bestowed on her. Her patience and goodness were rewarded at last,